Ah, tea time.
Welcome everybody to Souldin's expert, completely qualified and professional medical advice. Now when you are suffering from a great range of ailments and are feeling under the weather, there is one thing that happens to have a solution to just about everything you could be suffering from, and that is tea. More specifically, certain kinds of tea. I have heard often that peppermint tea is very helpful when you are suffering from situations such as a cold or sore throat, and various other stomach problems. And likewise, a ginger tea, such as today's lemongrass and ginger tea, is great for when you are suffering from problems with your bowel, as I currently am at the moment. It is merely just a bit sore and bloated, but a tea is a perfect remedy for such a minor inconvenience, and lemongrass and ginger tea shall be that herbal tea that should help me heal. Its brew time is 3 to 5 minutes, which I've brewed it to 4 times to make sure there is a perfect lemongrass smell to it. Its brand is Darville's of Windsor, and it's a tea with a lot of spicy bright lemongrass and a hint of zest. This is an uplifting tea that will take you to the sky in a swirl of lemony freshness and hopefully make my body feel that bit better. So yeah, welcome everybody! Souldin the Grin Brothers here, and it's time for another episode of Tea Time. It was nice to actually do another bit of medical talk about teas as well, although I didn't fully look up all the medical advice to it. Like I said, my bowel's a bit bloated at the moment, not sure why. Maybe I just haven't drunk enough water during the day, or maybe it's because I've drunk nothing but tea and fizz these past few days. And at that, a great range of different teas. Not all of them are healthy teas to have nothing but going through your bowels. And likewise, maybe it's the choice of food, yada yada. Maybe it's because I accidentally ended up being a display product the other day. Yeah, it was a bit of a rush for my Christmas job and ended up being a display product instead of the actual food. That happened. Proving I can eat just about anything if I put my mind to it. Please don't eat display products. In any case, I'm not feeling too good, but ginger tea is something that is supposed to help out with that, and lemongrass and ginger tea should be just the ticket into helping me feel a bit better. That and drinking plenty of water. So anyway, for today's tea time, actually, I'm kind of wondering. I've been using my old Miiverse artwork of Nanka for this, her as a nurse. But I wonder if I should, commission an artwork of Nanka dressed up as a doctor or nurse, serving a bit of tea, for these rare occurrences I do the medical talk. In any case, for today's tea time, let's see. It's actually kind of a bit of a morbid title, thinking about it, in regards to the medical stuff. But in any case, for today's tea time, I was actually just watching, just before today's recording, earlier this morning, I was watching a video by, I think it's the Southern Sega Gamer. I'll put up his proper name on screen. But I went back and I first found him through this Resident Evil 2 Sega Saturn port, cancelled one of course, which was an interesting video. And then I saw that he was doing a Dead or Alive video. This was a Dead or Alive retrospective on Dead or Alive 1, 2 and 3. And that kind of sparked me to think about a tea time topic that I was considering talking about, but never ended up talking about because I believe I covered some of the threads of it in, say, Kirby Star Allies and maybe a bit in Shadow of Mordor. Maybe I covered some of it in Dragon's Crown Pro. But yeah, today's topic is a Dead or Alive topic, and it's kind of a reaction to my thoughts and feelings on Dead or Alive 6. And the episode title, this tea time's title, shall be Dead Forever or Alive Again. Because it's more a wonderment about the future of the franchise, because both on my personal appreciation for it and on how it seems to have been received, which is not well lately. Dead or Alive 6 had a very rocky marketing to it. That's putting it in, very subtle terms, I guess. It's to be blunt, Shiramori kind of handled the PR absolutely horrendously. That was a train wreck, entirely a train wreck. And the perception of Dead or Alive 6 is somehow worse than it's ever, and the Dead or Alive series seems to somehow be worse than it's ever been, which is strange for the franchise, which is often just seen as effectively the titty fighter. The fighter only known for, the big jiggly, the breast physics sort of thing, despite being a fighter with a lot of merit to it. The Dead or Alive franchise is an easy to pick up and play system with a very simple to understand system of combos beat grabs, throws beat holds, which is the counter system, and the hold/counter beats the sort of punches and kicks, which are referred to as strikes. Very simple mechanic to understand. Then there's stuff like the stun mechanic, where basically you have certain moves which allow you to stun your opponent and get him potentially with a juggle or a power move and such. And, it's a simple to understand system with a lot of flashiness to it. Both in the graphical department, it's always looked beautiful. Of course, the presentation of some of its characters. And in the stage environments and the stage interaction and how they have, different sort of planes of stages, as it were, sort of different heights as you go for about, going across the terrain, and you can interact with the stage environment and hazards and such. And Dead or Alive series has a lot going for it, but it's always kind of been, unfortunately, fallen that character of being known as the fighter for the breast physics. And yet somehow its perception seems to be even worse, because with Dead or Alive 6, Jimbo seemed to try to address this issue. Admittedly, the Dead or Alive franchise has tried to address this issue previously with Dead or Alive 5, where they focused more on a I'm a fighter thing, but that didn't pan out too well, in that Dead or Alive 5 initially didn't seem to get received too greatly, or at least there wasn't much buzz about it. It has since been received better, but that was actually more because of Dead or Alive Last Round, the various upgrades it had over time. These brought along their own issues, such as the fact that now people are, often critical of the Dead or Alive DLC method and its obsessive amount of costumes they throw into the game. But, still, Dead or Alive 6 somehow made things far worse when they tried to tone things down and then not tone things down and then tone them down and try to present things differently to the non-Japanese and the Japanese audience, seemingly not aware that the internet exists and that people can see both sides of both of these very differing interviews and such. And basically, Dead or Alive 6 didn't get received too well. It's amazing that it even got into the Game Awards sort of fighting game category. I'm pretty sure it didn't win. I would be surprised. But, for instance, checking out the Dead or Alive Reddit, for instance, no one was really rooting for it. These were people who actually played Dead or Alive a lot and were big fans of the Dead or Alive franchise, and even still continue to play Dead or Alive 6. And yet there was very few people who were actually rooting and saying, well, out of all these, Dead or Alive 6 should win. A lot of people didn't feel that much attachment to it. And there was also a lot of talk of, Dead or Alive 5 Last Round better. And honestly, it's a sentiment that I'm kind of in agreement with. In fact, I've actually kind of stopped playing Dead or Alive 6. And if I do pick up Dead or Alive to play, I go with Dead or Alive 5 Last Round. And, well, the main reason for this is there's not much reason for me to play Dead or Alive 6. Dead or Alive 5 Last Round is the bare option, because I'm not a fan of the meter system in Dead or Alive 6, whereas I'm a big fan of the power blow mechanic in Dead or Alive 5 Last Round. And as well as add on to the fact that Dead or Alive 5 Last Round has more content via stuff like tag, all the different costumes they added over time, and of which a lot of the Dead or Alive 6 costumes they've been adding are just recycled costumes from the previous game, except you're paying for them again. And, lots of stuff like that. Dead or Alive 5 Last Round is just kind of better presented. I mean, to be fair to DOA 6, it does have better loading times. But I even think into the slight graphical stylings of it, Dead or Alive 5 Last Round is a bit better. I've got more of a preference to it. It's the engine that they were previously using, the soft engine, was incredible. And Dead or Alive 6's lack of that makes it feel slightly off. It's not as good. It's good in its own right, but not compared to Dead or Alive 5 Last Round. And ultimately, when I finished the story mode of Dead or Alive 6, I had nothing to do with it. Admittedly, part of that is my specific problem of not having online for the Xbox One, because I'm currently in a battle where I'm trying to decide which system to have online for. Should I have online for the Microsoft systems or the Nintendo systems? At the moment, it's neither. My Nintendo Switch has terrible online, so it might not be worth it in the end, and yet Nintendo systems tend to be the things I steer to predominantly. And it's also a lot cheaper than the Microsoft systems online, which is very pricey for someone who doesn't have a consistent job to be spending that sort of money per year. But yeah, as I was saying, I finished the story of Dead or Alive 6, and yeah, that was it. There was no reason to stick around. There's the challenge modes things, but they never really gripped me in a way. Possibly because there's not much story content to them, if any. Oh, well, there's no story content. There's ways they could have established some sort of story content in it in special ways, but ultimately there wasn't. And they didn't go that route, which is a shame. The problem is that the rewards were very lacking. Rather than actually receiving a costume or receiving money to spend on a specific costume, you received random parts for a costume. And at first, you received them for characters you weren't even playing as, potentially. It was completely random. But ultimately, I'm not feeling much incentive to play through it because the rewards aren't good enough, effectively. I don't feel like I'm earning something proper through it. I feel like I complete one of the challenges and it's like, there's not that much sense of an accomplishment to it. because the reward in itself is so poor. Which is a shame, and then that basically leaves the only thing for me to do, because there's no tag mode or really any of the other sort of fun little modes. That really leaves me only with the story mode, and that's kind of also a problem I've been having with Dead or Alive, and I'm wondering, and it has led me to think of one specific thing. In the Dead or Alive 6 story mode isn't very good. I mean, to be fair, Dead or Alive has never been spectacular with story, but I feel they actually had a better foundation for it back when they were focusing on the arcade mode sort of style of storytelling, where each character's story was told separately. I think in general the Dead or Alive series has had a problematic narrative because they're so obsessed with focusing on the ninjas, and it kind of feels like they brush aside the rest of the characters. There's a big focus on Doatech and the Dead or Alive stuff and all that, and yet the tournaments have fallen to the wayside where they're not really important at all. You can basically entirely ignore the tournament, and the big main sort of plot events with the villains and such is, separate to it all. It's just they happen to often occur around the exact same time. And that means there's like a good half of the cast of characters who don't feel like they're properly interacting, and the ninjas are always presented as much more powerful, and particularly Ryu Hayabusa. And then Kazumi feels very out of place as a protagonist. They keep trying to push her aside as if they don't want her as the protagonist. Admittedly, with stuff like Dead or Alive Extreme and the newer focus on Marie and Hanoka over just about everyone else, it kind of feels like they feel Kazumi's gone too old in a sense. But yeah, it's very strange because Kazumi's actually a pretty great protagonist, a nice sort of pacifistic character sort of thing. As a fighting game protagonist, is interesting to go with. She's got a cool design and such, which they keep trying to change as well, which I've never understood. They keep trying to move away from iconic design. Again, part of that could have been that shift to try and tone things down, but yeah, it's really odd. But yeah, the storyline to Dead or Alive 6 in particular, though, was pretty awful, particularly in how badly it did the whole handling the two sides of things. And it's a shame because the first half of it, before the tournament started, ironically, I felt was actually better than, say, Dead or Alive 5 Last Round story mode, and it was actually a really good story. It was actually really good fun seeing the characters banter and interact, and they did a really good job of it. And characters got a lot more diverse fights per character. But then it got to the late half, and it's like kind of ignored the tournament characters. The tournament went on. You didn't get to see most of the fights. Most of the main character, none of the ninjas, for instance, were participating in the tournament, which feels like the characters aren't properly interacting together. And it was this criticism of the story, as well as the criticism to the approach of Dead or Alive recently, that made me ponder, should Dead or Alive reboot itself? I feel like that's an option it could take. Soul Calibur 6 and the Soul Calibur series seem to have managed to drag themselves from their grave via, Soul Calibur 6. And that is a effective semi-reboot. They went back and did past events and changed the outcome of the storyline. Admittedly, Soul Calibur is more natural in trying to steer to that direction, whereas Dead or Alive isn't. But I feel they could have always done if they wanted to, a Dead or Alive Dimensions from, let's say the fourth game. I feel that's kind of the best position, because it's where, even 5, for instance, I didn't think had a really amazing story per se. Not even just okay at best. But Dead or Alive 6 kind of feels like nothing moves forward, in a sense. Like for instance, another problem is they introduced most of the newcomers, aside from Diego and Nico, as DLC in the previous game. So it didn't feel like very many new characters. And the Rido sort of plot event, which would have been, oh man, that would have been really cool, was spoiled because he was a DLC character in Dead or Alive 5 Last Round. So it wasn't a big twist that, oh, Rido's back. And then when he was back, he kind of just appeared and he was like, poof, he's gone. So, not much, a lot of build-up and, kind of spoilt build-up and no end result, really, from it. And so I feel they could have done Dead or Alive Dimension, the 3DS game. Well, actually, personally, probably my favourite of them, really. I ended up probably playing it most of all than any of the others. But Dead or Alive Dimensions, maybe do a new version of it for, Switch, Xbox One, PS4, maybe the new system sort of thing. And, explore the old storylines, and as a potential chance to reboot, and then continue on with, say, a new storyline, sort of like split-off path for new direction of things with Dead or Alive 5. Maybe introduce the characters that they seem to have gone really popular, like Marie and Hanoka early, that sort of thing. And there's certainly, when I think about the Dead or Alive franchise, changes I would make in terms of the story direction. For instance, there's not many villains. When you mostly get the villain fight, it's mostly just Christie, and then Doatech doesn't feel like much of a villainous force when there's only 2 people who are villains. You never really... Victor Donovan is the main villain, yet you don't really see him much. In Dead or Alive 6, the problem is they have the whole Kazumi clone plotline from Dead or Alive 5 and never actually properly carry it. Alpha's not properly in the game at all. You don't see her at all, which is odd. it feels they could do more of that, have more villain characters. And the funny thing is they've actually got the perfect setup to make new villain characters through what they explain with Rick, when they have this whole personality creation, where they can effectively create a second personality and install it in someone, as they seem to have done with Rick, where they've made a nicer personality for him to pretend as, which he's unaware of, and then they trigger something to switch him back to his actual personality of being Victor Donovan's son. And a villain role. They could literally do the same but in reverse, injecting villainous personalities in some of the good characters to be able to have them be villainous characters. And some characters could actually be put onto the villain side rather even shifting their personality. Kokoro, for instance, her mother is part of Doatek, so Kokoro has a very good reason to end up being on the villain side and would actually give her something to do. In Dead or Alive 6, for instance, Kokoro got nothing to do! And she got like 2 fights in total, which is a real shame, because that's actually kind of one of the biggest shames, because Dead or Alive 6, I finally actually started to play Kokoro really well. I've always liked her character, but I never could play with her all that well. I was Hitomi, Elliot, and Leon far more so, despite how much I like Kokoro, but in Dead or Alive 6, I really started to get a good handle of her, so it's a real shame that she never got to do anything. Leon is a character who seemed to just disappear simply because, we put Leon in the game to basically have a Bayman-style moveset when we didn't have Bayman in Dead or Alive 2, so we had Bayman return in Dead or Alive 3, and Leon just kind of disappeared. And it's like, you could easily include him in Layer and Storms. Again, he could be working with Doatek. He is a mercenary. He could be using it as a case to prove himself the strongest. His whole motivation sort of thing. Or again, the personality thing. It's a great mechanic for making villains. It's too one-sided. And again, it's also problematic again because half the cast don't interact with one another. That's just the story changes. I feel, another key problem with me is in terms of the feature of the franchise is, I feel that it's less inspired with its meter mechanic. I feel like they even need to... It's like too slight in the game to feel great, but at the same time, it's just there enough to be annoying. And it replaced a lot of the cool mechanics I liked before, such as tag team mechanic and the power blow mechanic. And power launcher not so much, but it was still a pretty cool sort of mechanic to have because it really took care of the super lightweight characters, such as Alpha. So annoying. But, the fact that you could easily juggle Alpha for days meant she had a pretty obvious weak spot. And, the problem there is I think they need to either focus more on the meter, so it's not quite as minor as it is. If you're going to have a super move, you might as well make it spectacular. The ninjas in particular can make things pretty spectacular. Like Ryu Hayabusa and Kazumi can fire Kamehamehas. Let them fire Kamehamehas for their sort of meter sort of finisher sort of things. Or you could just ditch the meter mechanic altogether because, it's stupid having side dodge as a meter mechanic. And ditch that altogether and go back to the power blow mechanic, which was unique and interesting and fit well with the Dead or Alive mechanics and fit well with the stun mechanic. And it also was great how they could have a nice tidy HUD and introduce a mechanic wherein it's based off if you've been hurt enough. It suddenly allows you to use the power blow. It interacted with the stage environment. It fit everything perfectly, whereas the meter just feels like they're trying to replicate other games, but in a very poor, half-hearted manner. I had the same complaint, even though I don't play it, when Tekken did it, where it just feels like very out of place. It just feels like, everyone else has got a meter, so I'll have a meter. At least Soul Calibur makes their sort of finishers flashy and interesting to look at. Admittedly, again, I'm not a fan of the Soul Calibur's super moves either, and the meter for me is only really worth it because of Reversal Edge and Yoshimitsu's having, meter-based sort of moveset. That actually is affected by his meter and his ability to drain meter. But yeah. So I'm not sure about the future of Dead or Alive. It's also kind of strange because Dead or Alive Extreme 3 isn't out overseas. And yet it's doing better than Dead or Alive 6 generally does in sales. And it's also again shows the kind of weird presentation clash wherein Shimbori was trying to tone down Dead or Alive 6, but at the same time there's Dead or Alive Extreme 3 being promoted in Japan. It's we notice these things. We're not completely ignorant of what's happening outside of our own respective countries, so we obviously know some of the things going on in Japan and your marketing in Japan. That is the internet after all. So yeah, is there a future for Dead or Alive? Well, I hope so. I mean, again, one other issue I didn't really actually address too much on is the DLC problem. But to be fair, that was a problem even back in Dead or Alive 5 last round. But it's kind of worse here because a lot of the DLC they're introducing now is DLC that we already got in Dead or Alive 5 Last Round. It already has a problem in of itself because a lot of the DLC, again also in Dead or Alive 5 Last Round, is big costume packs, but they tend to not be very specific to the characters as a result. For instance, Christmas dresses, and just about every character will have the same Christmas dress. Maybe one or two have a slight change in style, like the Kazumi clones will often have like a black dress instead. But not significant enough, and a lot of the characters just kind of wears the same outfit. And it's also too focused on the girls only. I mean, I know this is strange, complaining about the focus of the girls in Dead or Alive, but Dead or Alive used to actually have more male characters in it than girls. There was actually 3 female fighters in the first Dead or Alive, interesting enough. And I feel the advantage Soul Calibur has in terms of perception, whereas despite how erotic and ecchi Soul Calibur is, it doesn't get sort of lambasted for it as much as Dead or Alive. Maybe because Soul Calibur actually is very even in terms of distribution. I mean, it has Voldo. It's not afraid to, sexualize its male characters. And I feel Dead or Alive could easily do that, And it's also why, when it came to the DLC costumes, pretty much the only ones I typically bought were the Halloween costumes, because it made a costume for everyone. Heck, it made the DLC costumes even for the DLC characters, like the Virtua Fire characters. The guest characters, like Virtua Fire characters, I meant. And the DLC characters as well. And that's really awesome, and it was really creative and, individual to each character. Some didn't always hit the mark, but they looked like they had a lot of passion to it, and that doesn't feel the case of a lot of the Dead or Alive 6 DLC in general, because again, a lot of it is just repeats. And they ended up basically cornering just about every costume idea they could think of in Dead or Alive 5 Last Round, so it's going to be hard to not make it feel like a repeat unless they give more individual personality to these costumes rather than just make them such broad sets. And so it's gone to the point where when people think, Dead or Alive's getting DLC, whereas in other fighting game franchises, people are really excited for the new DLC, like with Smash Bros. Or Tekken, people just kind of sigh with Dead or Alive 6. Or at least, again, that's the perception I get on Reddit, Dead or Alive's Reddit section. I'll leave a link to it below. But yeah, it just seems very downhearted. And it's very hard to get them excited anymore. And so it does make me wonder, what is the future for Dead or Alive? Is its best direction to sort of improve things with Dead or Alive 6 Last Round, as it were? But then doesn't really address the problems of the story mode, which is lackluster. I mean, I think the problem with the story mode, ultimately, is they've tried to go in the same direction as Mortal Kombat and such, wherein, much like a lot of fighting games, where they forgot to do where I feel the arcade story mode of following individual characters often works out better. In any case, I'm going to try this lemongrass and ginger tea. I hope it's not gone too cold. And hope it cures my ails, as it were. Like a lemon strepsil. It's got good lemon taste, good lemon flavour. A little bit of an odd aftertaste there, but mostly otherwise lemon. It's not as strong as it smells. It's a bit odd, It's a little bit disappointing in that regard, but otherwise a pretty good tea. Maybe I should have had it warmer before I first took my first sip. Yeah, again, bit of an odd aftertaste. Lemon strepsil is, again, the closest comparison to it. It doesn't flow across much of the tongue. It's basically only like the little bit of the tip of the tongue and then a little bit of the front of the tongue. So it's not going through the mouth very much. But the smell is fantastic. It feels so soothing on the throat. Just not nearly as strong as I feel it could be. Again, because of the contrast between its smell and its taste. But yeah, hopefully that'll start to make me feel a bit better. So yeah, I am concerned about the future of the Dead or Alive franchise and the Dead or Alive series. I am wondering what direction it can take to address its problems, or if it will continue to go in a direction I'm not a fan of. The story could do with improvement. The fighting mechanics needs to be more specific, and it needs to not be too concerned about trying to change its tone, because otherwise it's going to not necessarily pull in a new fan base, but damage its pre-existing one, which is a shame. And I really, hope they get a clearer direction to take. Shimbori seems to have stepped down in his directorial role, so it'll be interesting to see where the next director of the Dead or Alive series takes things, as well as how the future of the DLC is going to go. They're continuing to support it despite the sales not being nearly as strong as previous entries. So they've at least got some sort of optimism for it, or they're at least keen to support it. a drive support. So maybe there are some passionate developers within Koei Tecmo and Team Ninja who want to see this sort of Dead or Alive series thrive, and so they're keeping an eye, and maybe they'll be able to fix things with either a new Dead or Alive variation of 6, or maybe they'll fix things via actually thinking of a new game or reboot, as it were, or even a collection of the older games. That'd be pretty cool. Or kind of redundant with apparently the new Xbox Series X. I'm going to just call it Xbox Scarlet. The new Xbox Scarlet being apparently backwards compatible with literally everything. So you can pretty much play every Dead or Alive game via your Xbox Series X. Sorry, Xbox Scarlet. In any case, hope you enjoyed this tea time. Feel free to tell me what you think about the Dead or Alive franchise from what you've heard of it. If you've played it. Where do you think it should go in terms of the future? Am I right to be concerned about it? Yada yada, all that sort of stuff. And I hope you enjoyed this tea time. Cheerio!